Alrighty, we are here with Jess Loseke, co-founder of Midwest Barrel Company. Uh, as someone from the Midwest and who loves barrels and companies as well, this is a dream come true. So thanks, Jess. But thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having
Thank you so
me.
much for joining. How you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, thanks for all you guys do. We're we're gonna get into all sorts of your story involving barrels and bourbon and wine and beer and all that fun stuff. But before that, I have to rip the band-aid off in a very, I'll call it inappropriate way, but it ties to your business. As prep for this, there's some interesting things I've learned about your business and a couple things involving barrels. One being sex toys and one being bung holes. So choose your own adventure. Which of those would you like to share a story?
Let's just tie them together. How about
Perfect.
that? That's where we want to start.
Yeah. Well, it might
Okay.
be. Well, you can decide if that's where you want to end too. But yeah, go. Yeah, go for it. Share what those have to do with your business.
Okay, so we are going to get right into it. So let's do a little barrel anatomy for you. So every barrel, bourbon barrel anyway, is built from American white oak wood. And each barrel has what are called staves. So you can think of those as the slats. They have two heads and they have six rings, and the rings are what hold it together. There's no nails, no screws, no hinges. One of those staves contains a hole in it, and it goes either on the what is called the belly of the barrel or it goes on one of the heads. And wherever it is, that is called the bung hole, which gets lots of chuckles from people outside of the barrel community.
Well, it's
And
infamous for from Beavis and Butthead, right? There's a famous line
you
about it.
know,
Yeah.
I'm not super familiar with Beavis and Butthead's show, but I can imagine that fitting right into the type of comedy that that they enjoy. So
There's some famous line
probably
about TP and bung holes. We'll just leave it as that. But anyway, that's how
okay.
I first heard about it before the barrel anatomy came into it.
Yeah. So probably the most crazy story of any barrel that we've ever sold was when we were still located in Nebraska, and there was an individual that lived in western Nebraska that liked to produce interesting contraptions for intimate activities. And so he purchased a barrel from us and was going to make some sort of contraption. And I don't know how the bunghole was working into that, but I'm sure that's as far as I got in my questions. We left it at that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I just threw you through the ringer right away. Don't always start with every guest talking about bungholes and sex toys, but where relevant, we always try to bring it up. So thanks for that, Jess. But no, so
That's
let's.
the most interesting podcast intro I've ever done. So you can add
It's
that to the
great.
list.
It's up there. Well, next week we're helping a client launch the Bunghole podcast, so that should fit well. No, I'm just kidding. So, all right, let's get a little less unruly. Let's get to Midwest Barrel Company. And so you hinted at some of the the interesting ties of the barrel world there, but uh, I heard that this actually started like way, way, way back in the day, kind of from your husband's hobby of like buying and
Mhm.
selling stuff online. Can you take us
Yeah.
through his shoes and kind of your perspective of that?
Yeah, so when we first got married, I was working in HR consulting. So I specialized in human potential and positive psychology and traveled quite a bit with healthcare clients. And so I was gone a lot. And he was working on his PhD in what is called viticulture. So viticulture is the science of growing grapes. And he had quite a bit of extra time on his hands. And so he started going to garage sales, auctions, estate sales. If you've ever seen the show American Pickers, that was like right at their prime. And he was like right in the American Pickers era. So I like to tell the story that he started out buying other people's junk and reselling it to make money. And so he did that from 2013 to 2015. And in 2015, we had our first kid. And I thought, hey, maybe we shouldn't spend all weekend, every weekend at these auctions, because he was buying farm equipment and collections of things. So he would have to be there very first to scope out what he wanted, but then he always wanted the most expensive things that went at the end of the day. And then we'd have to go back. It just was a whole thing. So he decided to start thinking about what's one item that he could buy and resell. And he landed on wine barrels because of his connections in the Nebraska wine and grape growers industry. And he started doing that and quickly learned that craft breweries were using barrels to age beer and started getting requests for bourbon barrels. And really, just this hobby kept getting out more and more out of control. And that's kind of the background story. Do you want me to go into how I got into it?
Yeah, yeah, would love that. But I think real quick on that part, what is going through your mind when your husband's spending all of his free time just like basically a whole black market online of all sorts of different products?
Yeah. Yeah. So I get asked a lot, how do you work with your husband? I could never do that. I could never work with my husband. And I totally understand that. But I think the thing that makes us a really unique match is that we both let each other be who we are and we don't try to change each other. And so when he started wanting to do this, it really wasn't motivated out of making money. It was motivated out of an opportunity and just something that he thought was fun. And so I was super supportive, and my support started to change as we started having a family, because he would go to state auctions and buy things, and the police kept coming to our house because he would buy like a bicycle, for example, and then he would list it on Craigslist at the time, and then somebody would see their bicycle listed, contact the police, and then they would show up at our house. And so this was happening fairly regularly. He would go meet people in parking lots. I didn't love that one to sell. I mean, it can kind of be a bit of a dangerous game, but ultimately he got a lot of joy out of it, and I was not involved. That was like his thing, and he did his thing, I did mine, and we were a happy couple.
All right. So what turned you into an unhappy? No, I'm just kidding. No, but what made you what made you realize that it's time for you to join the business as well?
Well, nothing made me realize. So in 2017, we had our second son, and I had a 4-month-old baby, and I'd gone back to work for maternity leave. I was getting ready for work, and I was running through the house, like physically running, and I went around our basement, like landing, and I slipped off the top of the landing. And I shattered my left humerus bone. I broke ribs. I eventually had to have back surgery, and it was a life-changing injury. And I took another leave of absence. I tried to go back to work the following January, and I wasn't ready. I still had a ton of physical therapy I needed to do, and was in his last semester of his PhD program. And so I quit my job without a plan. So we were living off of he worked at for the University of Nebraska, and so we were living off of his very small salary. And then he had this hobby business that took up a ton of time, but we were funneling every dollar back into it because he would just use that to buy more inventory. And I quit my job, not ever intending to be in barrels, but he had hired one employee, and through 2018, they were with him. And I had kind of started, showing up a little bit more. And then at the end of 2018, that individual quit, and we just had kind of our own come to Jesus moment of, do we want this to be a real business, or is this a hobby that we need to scale down? And ultimately, we decided, let's go all in. I re-engaged in childcare, and I showed up not knowing anything about barrels, but I knew how to work really hard, and I knew a lot about leadership and scaling companies just from working with other great leaders that I had coached along the way. And so it turns out we're a pretty good team, and that's how I entered. I just kind of showed up at work one day, and I was like, at least I can answer the phone.
I got chills in multiple ways. One, just fired up that you guys are like, let's do this. But on the negative side, on the childcare side, we've learned over the past year how expensive daycare is, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not a fun, but a very very worthwhile cost to add to your costs. So
Yeah.
That's a huge adjustment there. So, all right. So at the start, my depending on who you are, either very impressive or very immature start to this episode. Uh, I shared a little bit of the aspects of the barrel world, but can you just give us a background of like, we don't need exact numbers, but like just kind of high level. What are your barrels? What type of clients do you have like most often these days? What are they used for?
Yes. So we have three main categories of markets. The most, the largest amount of barrels that we ship go internationally. So they are going to go, a bourbon barrel can only be used or filled one time, but, and it cannot age a bourbon a second time, but it's still a very great product. And so here in Kentucky, the distilleries will fill their barrel, they'll empty it, they can't use it again. That's where we come in, we buy it, and then as often as possible, we want to get that barrel to a second fill because it's still a super great product. So we ship a lot of barrels to Scotland, Ireland, India, China. So those are all huge whiskey markets. We ship to over 30 countries, but those are our four biggest ones. If it's not going internationally, which a barrel for Scotch can be used up to 40 years in Scotland. So it's filled here for 4 to 12 years most commonly, and then it can go there for another 40 years to hold more whiskey. If it's not used for that, the next consideration is, can it go to a brewery for craft beer? So craft breweries will use a barrel anywhere from 3 to up to 12 months. Probably 6 to 9 months is the sweet spot where most of them will do that. So a lot of them, and that's where we really grew and got our start, was in craft beer. And then the third outlet is my favorite, when it goes from our home to yours, where you're going to use barrels for really cool and interesting projects. And so we sell the full barrel, we sell the barrel parts, we sell smoking wood, kind of anywhere in between, that we want to extend that barrel life cycle as long as possible.
And now we know that it can be extended in many different ways. But
Yep.
so it's really cool. It's like something that I mean, like I for a while now, I've been a huge fan of beer and bourbon and anything in that ballpark. But I had never really thought of like barrels from I guess from a product standpoint. I always if you go check out if you go to Louisville and check out Whiskey Row there.
Hmm.
There's barrels everywhere in all those
Yep.
distilleries, but I hadn't really thought about like how many different ways they can be used and how they can be recycled. And so like you guys, it's like the niche of niche in like a cool area and can be used in so many different ways. And now if you look at like if you go to like a craft brewery, it's always pretty cool when they have something that's like a barrel aged beer, like a special offering on tap. So it's cool you guys are a part of
Yeah,
all that.
and we kind of hit the sweet spot with that, where we entered the market when craft beer was really exploding. And so we became a trusted resource because we didn't just buy one type of barrel. Our goal was, let's bring in all different types. We can be a hub. So if you are a craft brewery and you're going to do 4 barrels of beer, maybe one of them is a bourbon barrel, one's a wine barrel, one's a tequila barrel, and one's a rum barrel. And so that's really been a sweet spot of ours, is being able to service customers that can't afford to buy just a onesie twosie. So we bring them in and then we're able to distribute everywhere.
Onesie twosie. I like it. It's like samesies from Superbad. So the how so- okay, so the way you're painting the picture of your husband getting started with this and before your injury and everything there, it kind of just sounds like a crazy guy with a bunch of barrels in his house. And now you've which you're not rejecting. And now it's like you're this international company that's got tens of thousands of barrels at any time, and you're trusted among some amazing clients. Uh, what did you do personally to like change that to like, all right, we're gonna get this to like a real like trusted company?
So the first thing, and I have to give Ben a ton of credit. He's super scrappy. He just starts without all the information. And the thing that he did that really changed everything for us was he put a barrel on the internet. So he actually built his own Wix website, put a barrel on, and then we'll never forget the day that somebody bought one online. And so what I'm really good at, Ben is really good at just starting without all the information, like actually to the frustration of our team a lot of times, where he just moves, and I'm really good at coming behind him and putting systems and process and scaling that. And so I've been able to really grow our e-commerce platform. And so we've had, I mean, we did Wix, then we moved to Squarespace, then we moved to WooCommerce, and then we built two different Shopify stores. And so we've really been, perfecting that. But I think, to go back to your question, the key differentiator of what we've done is we focused on hiring really great people and making that core to who we are. So identifying what's our mission, what's our vision, and what's our core values, and really trying to stay true to that, and being willing to pivot wherever the business calls us or takes us to, has allowed us to not just narrow, because it is a niche category, so you have to be flexible as needs change. A couple of years ago, you couldn't buy barrels anywhere. There was such a shortage, and today it's the opposite problem, where the spirits industry has changed a lot, and so barrels are readily available. And so we have to be able to be willing and able to adapt as the markets change. And because we focused on, when I hire somebody, the conversation that I have is, we move really fast here and we change all the time. And so, whatever job that you think you're getting hired for today, you might not be doing that exact same job 6 months from now. And if that sounds exciting for you, this could be the right place. If that sounds intimidating or unattractive, you will struggle to fit in here, because we just are constantly evolving.
I think that's something that's really appealing to a lot of people, especially like new company startup space. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people want to, like, they're craving that entrepreneurial aspect of, I want to help out any way I can here, or like, let's figure out stuff. And there's something incredibly rewarding about, like, if you come up with a new idea, we can get this rolling pretty quickly, as opposed to,
For
I
sure.
was just talking to somebody on a call earlier who was saying how when they worked in the corporate world, they were so frustrated by, would have everything would need to go through like three rungs of approval,
Yeah.
and you can just go. So that's really exciting. And then, I mean, I mentioned startup, but like, now you guys have been around for over a decade, so congrats on that. Like, it's really cool how far you've
Yeah.
come. And
Thank you.
yeah, yeah, it's really inspiring. Um, when you look at the the operation side of things, it's I didn't plan to make this pun, but I'm sorry. It sounds kind of like a barrel of monkeys, where it can get really complicated really quick if you're not organized with things. So now, I mean, I heard you mention in another interview that sometimes can have like 20,000 barrels in your warehouse. So how do you keep things, or like, how do you get it to the point that you can run things efficiently and organize at a scale like that?
So we've made a really strategic decision up to this point that we don't do what other cooperages do. So most of our competitors actually make new barrels, or they repair used barrels. And I'm not saying that we won't ever get into that space, but up to this point, we've found that our specialty is really getting the barrel from point A to point B as fast as possible. And so we have an inventory management system, and that sounds very basic, but a lot of people in our industry, it's just very historic. They haven't needed one, and so they don't have inventory management systems in the same way. We can't operate our business without one, because we're trying to move so many barrels so quickly. And even when we need to get our barrels repaired, that's a great example of it. They're still ours, but they have to go somewhere. And so, just having the tech has been really critical to us. And I've actually strived to lead our business like tech founders think. I went through a program a few years ago. It's called Pipeline Entrepreneurs, and it's an amazing program. And they're a cohort system. They take 13 entrepreneurs out of Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri every year, and you go through four different modules. And I went through that because it's mostly tech founders that do it. And I really wanted the experience of learning to think and act like a tech founder, because I wanted to build everything tech enabled. And now we have all of the platforms that we use are AI driven, and we're able to move way faster than we would be able to if we didn't use that.
That's, yeah, inventory is great. It's something I got a little exposure to in just my short time in the corporate world, and it's kind of satisfying when you can get things organized and you figure out what
Mhm.
SKUs to get rid of, and what we call it, SKU rationalization, things like that. But man, it can get so complicated and so tedious. And What advice do you have for anybody who is looking to get like a handle on their inventory like that?
Yeah, for us too, our inventory all looks identical. And so to to the layman, a barrel is a barrel is a barrel. But to us, what matters is what was held inside that barrel. So it could be produced by the same cooperage, it could look identical, but what it held, it could contain vastly different value. And the best advice that I probably have is that you need to start small, and your tech is it's something that it's not a one-time investment. And this was something I had to learn. So I'll just use our website as an example. I came on, so Ben had built a Wix website, and then in 2018 we built a Squarespace, and I was involved. I wasn't really working in the business, but I was really involved with that website. So when I came on full time, WooCommerce was my first big project. And the goal of moving to WooCommerce is I wanted a way for our domestic breweries to be able to quote an accurate shipping quote from the website. I didn't want them to have to call us because I understand how e-commerce works. You want to get online and see, well, I'm going to add 4 barrels to my cart. How much would it actually cost for me to get them there? They don't want to call me and ask that. They just want to be able to see that. And so that was the first big project that I did. And when I did that, I thought, oh, we're done, we're set, we're good. Well, I quickly learned that every year you really need to have a CapEx budget for your website. And it's something that you're going to have to continually invest in. And it's not just we bought the software, we did an implementation, we're done. It continues to require, it's just like a piece of equipment. It's just like a truck that you buy that you have to maintain over time. And then you get so much life out of it. And then you have to buy a new truck. It's tech works the same way. And so you can't look at another company even of the same size and see where they're at and think we're going to be at the same place just by implementing this one piece of tech. You have to map it out and you have to start with baby steps because otherwise it gets way too overwhelming and things break, and that's where your whole operations breaks down. And that's why large companies really struggle to implement tech enabled features when they haven't used them, is because it has a trickle down effect and then systems start breaking and they ship the wrong products at the wrong time to the wrong people, and then they stop using it.
And I have to ask you a couple definitions there. You reminded me,
Yeah.
cooperage I've heard of before, but technically, what's a cooperage?
Yeah, a cooperage is a manufacturing facility for barrels. They are going to be somebody that produces a new barrel from scratch, or they repair an existing barrel. And um, it's a historic practice. So coopers, that they employ what are called coopers, and it's a trade, and it's a very fascinating trade. And so historically, barrels were made by hand, and today there are really advanced manufacturing facilities that can do the majority of it by machine, but a cooper still oversees the process.
Got it. Yeah, I knew it was something barrel related, but I didn't
Mhm.
know it was like I thought it was just kind of like a wood factory as well. Like if that even makes sense. A wood something like I didn't know it was barrel specific, so that's awesome. There's a whole like history there
Yeah,
too.
so yeah, so kind of the process is every barrel starts as an American white oak tree that grows somewhere between 70 to 100 years. They cut
They're
the
all
tree down.
oak.
They're all, yes, but there's French oak, Hungarian oak, there's some other wood types,
Yeah.
but American white oak is kind of the tried and true that everybody wants. And so they grow, up to 100 years. They harvest the tree, and then every tree only makes between 1 and 3 barrels. And so then from there, it goes to what is called a stave mill, where they take the logs and they produce the staves, which are the slats of the barrels where the bunghole goes. And then
Watch your
the
mouth.
next
No, I'm just
step,
kidding.
the next step is those staves actually, it's a process called seasoning. They're going to sit outside anywhere from 6 months up to 3 years. And then when they're done with that, that's when it goes to the cooperage. So the cooper actually assembles the barrel before the heads are put on. Everybody knows and loves the fire part of it. So they either toast or char the inside of the barrel, and that char is what gives your bourbon the flavor that we all know and love.
I feel like I'm back in fifth grade when we learned about the water cycle and evaporation, condensation, precipitate through the lens of barrels. It's really really an
Yes.
interesting industry. Like who would know
Didn't I
that?
tell
Well,
you there's
obviously you
a,
guys. Go ahead.
yeah, didn't I tell you there's a quiz at the end?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A pop quiz at that.
Yes.
Uh, the other definition, real quick, I've heard of it, but capex, is that capital expenses, or is that
Yes.
okay? Cool.
Yep.
You can tell
Capital
I didn't
expenses.
study
So
accounting.
yeah, and again, it's more so just thinking about like what areas of the business are we going to invest in. So it's not a monthly expense. It's not what would be considered like a yearly expense. These are generally more one-time expenses. You can deduct them differently on your taxes, but you have to plan for them. And if you don't plan for tech expenses, it's it's really challenging because they sneak up on you, and if you don't plan for any maintenance and something breaks, I mean, I found that websites, they do break, and so you have to have a plan for what am I going to do when something doesn't. We actually we moved a couple weeks ago, and so we took our website offline, and our marketing team was doing some updating while our warehouse team was physically moving. And when we turned our website back on, Google had unindexed all of our pages, which we have thousands of pages on our website because every product listing is its own page. And so we've had to spend the last 2 weeks re-indexing, and that's never a word I thought that I would know what re-indexing on Google is. So it's just things like that that we didn't consider that. We're just like, oh yeah, we'll pause our website for a week. Our marketing team will be working remotely. This will be a great time. And then we had to physically move our inventory. We're like, we won't take orders, so it won't be confusing. This will work perfect. And then lo and behold, Google's like, nope, you're done.
Oh, God, sorry you have to deal with that. Yeah, that's just like one of those things as an entrepreneur that just like the whole like anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Like you never know what you're
Yeah,
gonna see and what you're gonna have to
you don't
deal with
know.
there. And the internet's always it's always like wrestling a rattlesnake there.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so actually, moving was one of the things I was really excited to ask you about. So there's a big move which we'll get to. I mean, an even bigger move, but your recent move. So is that within Louisville, or what you guys
Yes.
do?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So we are like pretty much professional movers at this point. Um,
And professional re-indexers.
yes, exactly. All the things. So we okay, let's back up because I'm sure you're wondering about this. So when we started in Nebraska, I mean, one year we moved 5 times because barrels are very big, and every single time that we would move, Ben would say, "If we ever fill this warehouse, we're doing something wrong," because our goal is to get the barrels in and out as fast as possible. And lo and behold, the business continued to grow. And so we continued to get bigger and bigger. At one point, when we were in Nebraska, we had moved to what I thought was like our dream facility, and everything was, fine and dandy. We had worked so hard to find it. And then we made the decision to relocate from Nebraska to Louisville. And clearly the biggest move that we've ever done. And it was a process, it was kind of a lengthy decision. We knew we needed to make the move because we were shipping so many barrels from the Louisville surrounding areas. So Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, we were sending them to Nebraska, and then we were sending them back out to a port to go overseas. And it just didn't make any sense. So we first tried to set up a remote facility in Louisville, and that we just couldn't really get that off the ground. And so then we decided, well, Ben and I are going to move for 6 months to a year to get it up and going. And then we pretty quickly realized, I think we're going to need to move full time. So then we decided, okay, we're going to have our Louisville facility and we're going to keep our Nebraska facility. And then after doing that for a little bit of time, about a year, we're like, we cannot continue to have our Nebraska facility. It just didn't make any sense. And that was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made as a leader, because we had a really great team in Nebraska that had stuck with us through the move. And I had to personally make the decision of, do we keep these people working remote? And we know with COVID that there's so many more things that you can do remotely, but culture is such a big part of what we do that there was a lot lost between having half of our team remotely and having half of it in person. So ultimately, we brought everything to Kentucky, but there has been an industrial warehousing shortage ever since we've been here. So our journey to find the right location has been really hard. And in 2024, we thought we found the perfect facility. We leased again what was our dream building. It was huge. It was would allow us to substantially grow bigger, and then the market crashed. And so I don't know how much you've been following the spirits industry, but it's like the housing crash of 08, 09 is what we've been going through. And so ultimately, in the last 6 months, we've had to really evaluate how do we continue to operate a financially healthy business and reduce our expenses. And reducing our footprint was it was our biggest line item. And so we made the difficult decision to move out of our other, I mean, it was a beautiful facility, and we found a fabulous new facility that we just moved into 2 weeks ago. It's quite a bit smaller, but it's going to function really great for what we're doing, and I'm really excited about it. But it's been one of the more difficult leadership journeys that I've been on has been, the past 6 months.
It's kudos to you for having the I guess the courage to make those decisions. I mean, those are not easy at all. Um, do you have any advice for any entrepreneur out there who's kind of struggling with a big decision like that could have big payoff, but also has a lot of scary aspects to it?
Yeah, I think the one thing looking back, you know, hindsight's 2020. So you see the things that you did well, and then you see the things that you wish you would have done differently. And the one thing I really wish we would have done differently is I wish we would have acted a little bit sooner. I think that some of these decisions would have had a lot less angst if we would have actively started reducing our costs a little bit faster. And I think we really believed whatever all of us in the bourbon industry want is that it's got to turn around, it's got to pick back up, it's going to happen, and it just hasn't happened quite as fast. And so I think that that's the one thing that my experience share is like when as an entrepreneur, we have the closest pulse on what is going on inside our business and oftentimes outside of our business. And even if your advisors or your team members are telling you no, that's oftentimes because they don't want the consequences of the change. Our team did not want to move. We had just moved not even a year ago, and moving, I mean, I think we moved 6,000 barrels. That is no easy task. And we did it in 4.5 days, and we've never done something like that before. I wish that I would have just trusted our intuition because the result ended up still being the same thing. We knew we needed to move a lot earlier than we did, and we still ended up having to move, but it was a lot more painful because everybody was a lot less prepared for it because we had to do it so quickly. So that's kind of the big thing. The other thing that I will say is that when you're going through periods where your business isn't working in the same way that it once did, really digging deep inside of you to figure out, well, I didn't have a plan when I started. I didn't know what my markets were going to be or what products I was going to sell, and trying to get back to that founder that started it, that wasn't worried about failure because there wasn't anything to lose or to fail. But when things get hard, we get scared, and we start making safe decisions. But when you're going through big changes, that's actually when you need to make the most bold changes.
That's an incredible point. I mean, I'm very guilty of this. Like, it's nice when you have a business and you get to a point of a certain level of stability and things are clicking, and it's like it feels so good and you don't want anything to change. But the reality is, like, every business needs to evolve over time, and there's crazy forces like market forces, like you're talking about, that just kind of dictate how this, something needs to change. And
For
so,
sure.
I think looking backwards and trying to, it's funny that I have a client. Shout out Shane. He's got the couples therapist couch. It's his podcast. So I've learned a lot about couples therapy through this. And one of the things he talks about working on with his clients is like inner child work, and how I guess
Hmm.
in therapy, it's common for for him to talk to clients about like looking inward and things that working out with your inner child. I'm clearly not a therapist. I don't know how this works, but it's almost like your inner first time entrepreneur work is what you need to do to like look inward and get to that like back against the wall, but also just entrepreneurial spirit, and that's what can keep things growing. So I'm a big fan of what you just said there.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Thank you. Well, you nailed it. I just regurgitated it and added a random example. Anyway, I trust on that random note. I trust that you're ready to switch it up a little bit. I promise no more question off the wall questions. However, this is this is a segment called the unusual. So pet peeves, quirks, weird comments. This is more doesn't have to tie to your business at all. Just about you, kind of as a founder, you as a person, really. Um, First thing,
So, okay, before we start with this,
yeah.
I saw that you had this on your list, and so I asked my husband what he thought was interesting, and he gave me a list of really boring, generic facts about myself. And so I'm concerned I'm uninteresting, and so I'm very curious to see where we go with this.
You are very not uninteresting. Did I say that the right way? Not uninteresting. I get tripped up. Yes, you're
Yeah,
very
double
interesting.
negative. I got it. Yes, the
Exactly.
double makes the positive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fat. We've had guests in the past that have asked their significant other or family members for that, and it's so funny to. It's a fun exercise for anyone to be like, what's unique about me in certain ways. So that's fun. So anyway, we'll give him some crap, but let's start with quirks. What's something a little quirky? This could be from you or from Ben. A little quirky about
Mhm.
your personality that somebody calls you out for, but it's who you are.
Yeah, and this is kind of where we started. So he's just like, you love to work. And I was like, well, that's super generic. And he's like, well, he's like, it's to a different level where like this is like your brain works so differently. And so parenting young kids, that was actually like being a mom, something that was really hard for me because little toddlers, they're not interested in, dad works with barrels and mom works on her computer. That's what they used to always say. Um, but I think how this is translating now from a quirky perspective. So last night I did a keynote at Bellarmine University, and it was 150 women that were there. And I invited my 10-year-old son to go. And we were sitting at the table before I gave the keynote, and I was like, "Hey, Theo, can you tell this group what's your biggest takeaway from it?" And he said my framework verbatim and he had only heard the talk once. And so from a quirky perspective, like I involve my kids in my work, like they're going to run this someday. And like this is their and that's not my goal per se, but I just think I didn't grow up with this privilege, and they have such a privilege of being able to get exposure to things that none of their peers do. And so I'm trying to get them to start thinking like a founder now, and so I have a very interesting parenting style. So that's where I went from Ben's like I work a lot to like I have a very interesting parenting style.
I'm all for that. I mean, I grew up with parents who are entrepreneurs. I think growing up with in an entrepreneurial family is so rewarding and definitely helps you think outside the box and think about problems and solutions in a different way. So I'm a big fan of your we'll call it Jess's take your child to work day every day plan.
There you go. And I did not grow up with parents that were, I mean, my dad drove a tractor at a feedlot, a cow feedlot, and my mom was a nurse, or she is a nurse. And so I did not grow up that way.
Yeah.
And so maybe it will seem normal to other entrepreneurs or founders, but for the average people, like I just tote my kids around to work with me every day.
Well, that's yeah, and that's like the best part of it is like so you're I mean so you had like an fulfilling, rewarding, like loving. I'm sure it was absolutely amazing, but you, you had an incredible different experience and dynamic with your parents as far as work goes than you are and will with your children. I think that's awesome.
For
It's just
sure.
like how it changes over generations, and I guess to an extent the my dad is the same way. Like his dad worked at International Harvester forever, and before that, and before that it was like farmers and stuff, and before that, and so it's like there's different levels of just like what types of work everybody does, and so it's really cool at your
Yeah.
entrepreneurial parenting approach. All right, so that's
Yes.
that's that's quirks. We'll fire Ben after that one. And then what about weird talents? What's something that's like or like I call it like a party trick. Well, I call it a weird talent, but it's like a party trick. What's something you're really good at but really has no impact on your business? A little thing.
I have no special talents. Like I'm a very average
You
person. I
like to
feel like,
work. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, yes. So I guess this kind of goes back to like, it's not a party trick, but when I was a kid, I really liked to read a lot. So I didn't play at recess. I read books. And I think that has translated into me being a very rapid learner. And so I am able to consume large amounts of information without getting tired. And so that's kind of my like my superpower. From a party perspective, since you use that word, I will tell you my biggest flaw is I'm super competitive, so much to the point that if I go to a party and there's going to be a game played that I've never played and other people have played it, I won't play because I will know I can't win. And that it's a huge personality flaw. Now having children, I've tried to expand my game repertoire because they also don't know how to play and my chances of winning are substantially higher against them. So so I feel like I so like I mahjong, the
Yeah.
it's all the rage right
Maj.
now with
Yeah.
women my age. And I didn't learn for a while. Well, then finally I went to a place where there were a whole bunch of other people learning, and it's like an advanced Rumikube, which is like my favorite game. And
Oh,
so
yeah. My wife loves that. Yeah.
I think I'm for mahjong, and mahjong's for me. So
Okay. And then what about pet peeves? What's something that just kind of ticks you off a little bit, but in the grand scheme of life, it's not a big deal.
oh, I mean, I have a lot. So I think from a business perspective, my biggest pet peeve is when people get frustrated with where they're at and they want to grow, but they don't know what they want to do and they don't take any ownership over wanting to do it. And I'm seeing this a lot in the Gen Z. So I mentor a lot of young women, and I'm kind of seeing a very clear split between women that are growing up as athletes and have the discipline to work really hard, and then other women that are getting influenced by the social media culture that you can be a millionaire by the time that you're 23. And that's just not how real life works. And so as a leader, it's this constant challenge of trying to mentor people to figure out what makes them tick, because they have to take radical ownership over their own lives. And as somebody that grew up very poor, I just can't understand not having a good work ethic. And so I do struggle with that. And I don't struggle with that a lot in my own business because I really, I try to find top performers and people that are really have a strong work ethic. But outside of my company, I continue to have these conversations and you just got to own it. And so that's a big pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think no matter what happens, whatever changes in the tech world, AI world, everything, like work ethic will always have extreme value. I think none of that will be untouched. All right,
Well,
let's
I think we're
wrap.
going to continue to
Yeah,
see a bigger gap between the people that are willing to work hard, because as AI it affects every single job and role, people that aren't willing to go out and learn and figure it out are going to continue to fall lower and lower, where the people that are willing to just start doing and learning, I mean, that gap is just going to continue to increase.
totally. Yeah, it works on that level as well. There's a the stave between groups will be. No, I was trying to think of a pun. That was awful. All right, let's.
Chat GPT, those you can insert them in. I feel like I like where you're going.
Exactly. I like to use my brain sometimes, but yeah. All right, let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q and A. You ready for it?
Let's go.
All right, let's get wild. You mentioned a pretty serious injury you had. Unfortunately, like in our family, we've
Yep.
seen it with my father-in-law and my father, some of my clients. I swear, over the past few years, there is just like a crazy uptick in just fluke random injuries like that, where somebody's breaking bones or has back issues, things like that. Based on like your experience and your recovery, what tip do you have for anybody that is currently going through something like that, where they're in recovery mode?
Yeah, it kind of just hits on what we were just describing, but you need to take radical ownership over it. I also have an autoimmune disease that I've had since I was 20, and there's nobody else that's going to own your physical, mental, or spiritual well-being. And I mean, I'm a big person of faith, and I think that when I had that freak injury, that I was supposed to have a complete life pivot, but it really took me down to a dark place because my entire identity was wrapped up in the career that I had built, and overnight it was gone. And I had to learn that a job doesn't define you. Even now with the role that I'm in, I have to be very careful that I don't let that happen, but you do have to take radical ownership, and there's not a perfect balance. So you are going to wake up some days and figure out, man, I'm super lonely and I don't have any friends. And you need to go make friends then. And then you make some friends and you realize, like, gosh, I haven't been performing as well at work. I need to work on that. Okay, go work at that. And then, man, my kid is really struggling in school. I can't invest in work or friendships now. Okay, well, go. You have to just go where life calls you a lot of times, but be really radical and unhinged about your approach in that.
Radically unhinged. I like it. Yeah, uncorked, unbunged. All right. So Louisville, which if you notice, the reason I don't know if I technically say it right as a local would say it. However, I don't say it as Louisville or Louisville because my dad's side is from Louisville and he grew up in Jeffersonville, like right across the river. And
Yep.
so been there many times. It's a great city, love that city. What's the thing that since you guys have moved to that area, what's the thing that you enjoy the most about the L1C4? No, I know you're not a Cardinals fan, but
I am a Cards fan.
you are a Cardinals fan
Oh
now.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, we decided when we moved here that we didn't have Nebraska anymore, and so let's go with Louisville because all of our red wardrobe transitioned very nice from Nebraska
Hey,
fans to
we'll
Louisville.
welcome you for IU too. Just keep going.
That's a little further up the road, but then we're also big volleyball fans, which is huge in Nebraska. And Danny
Yeah.
Busboom Kelly, who is from Nebraska, she was the Cardinals volleyball coach and got to know her well, and she's now back at Nebraska. But yes, we're all in on the Cards. We're all in on the Huskers. But the people here are, I mean, just top notch. Before we moved, everybody said Louisville's like a small town, big city, and I didn't really understand what that meant. But what I and in Nebraska, there's something called the state slogan for a while was Nebraska nice, and I've realized that Nebraskans aren't nice compared to Louisville. Like
Well,
Nebraskans are just, and I all my Nebraska people, I love you. Don't come for me. But there's a different level of hospitality in Louisville that when we moved here, they opened their arms to us and have just made us feel like we have always lived here. And I realized with that, I was like, wow, I didn't do that when I lived in Nebraska. I wasn't doing that for people that picked up their lives and moved. And I now I'm like on a mission. If I ever meet somebody and they're like, I'm new to the city, I'm like, I will introduce you to everyone I know. I'm super passionate about it.
well, if your friends, family in Nebraska are truly Nebraska nice, they won't come after you. So appreciate that
Yeah,
distinction there.
this is their opportunity to prove that they're nicer than Louvillians. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but we will see.
Yeah, exactly. Also, you guys, I mean, you have a business in the bourbon or bourbon adjacent space, so of course they're going to welcome you with gung ho over the arms. But no,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, I agree. Great people, great place. All right, last one. I saw in your Instagram bio. I think it was pickleball, Pilates, and prosecco. Which I'm a sucker for alliteration, so congrats on the three P's. I use three P's in my business too, different three P's. But if you could only have one of those P's, what would it be?
Oh, Pilates for sure. I love play. And I probably need to edit that because my mother-in-law would be so disappointed that it still says pickleball because I haven't played pickleball in a long time now, but I went through
Oh,
it. She's super good. And
yeah.
I am not, and so I got hopped on the trend. But if you've never done Pilates or Legree before, here is my plug. It will change your life. It will change your body. It is amazing. If you've had back pain, we touched on that. It's amazing for it. So that's my. I didn't know we were going to get Pilates in here. So
Of course, of course. Yeah, it's a wonderful uh, P to finish with. So Jess, thank you so much. Huge fan of your business, what you and Ben and team, Theo apparently as well, are
Yeah, and
doing. So,
Brooks, and Brooks.
yeah,
Yeah, I
Brooks,
can't forget
yeah,
the little guy.
yeah, exactly. So, thanks so much for making time and for all you guys do. I know, so if people want to learn more, I know it's midwestbarrelco.com. And
Yes.
then I know you're on
Yep.
LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else that you want people to connect with you guys or you online?
Yeah, so I'm everywhere, Jess Loseke. I also have the Barrel Girl handle, LinkedIn. I'm going to be reviving my newsletter soon, so you
Awesome.
can certainly follow that there. And you know, I'm on jesslosky.com as well, so find me on all the places.
Awesome. That's Loseke. I'm terrible at spelling on the podcast, but Loseke.
Correct. You can also look up thebarrelgirl.com because nobody can spell my last name. So trying to be smart about that one.
Perfect. And hopefully you can spell the correctly. All right. And the last thing, final thoughts. It could be a quote or kind of words to live by, whatever you want. Just like one line, one sort of statement to send us home here.
Yeah, so I just want to challenge all of the listeners that wherever you're at in your journey, just to be unhinged on purpose and to just go live your best radical lives and take radical ownership over that. Be unreasonable in everything you do.
Bring on the bongos.